Hello, folks. My name is Neil, and welcome to the episode 8, part 2 of the Fundamentals and Technical series. This is a series where we talk about platinum stocks that I consider to be excellent stocks to invest in. In the part 1 of episode 8, we have already covered the fundamentals of COLPAL. In that episode, I told you a story of how COLPAL started, and we talked about a few numbers of COLPAL. And if you'd like to take a look at that, look at the part 1 of this episode, the link would be shared in the description. Now, we've already ascertained that COLPAL is a very good stock to invest in. The question then arises is, what would be a good price to buy COLPAL? Or what would be a good price to enter into COLPAL for a long-term investor, for a swing trader, and for an intraday trader? And how can an intraday trader make money out of COLPAL? So, So please bear in mind, before I start off the technical analysis, this is not me giving you numbers of when to enter. Although if you enter within a day or two of this video, long-term and swing traders can actually make a profit out of it. Having said that, don't rely on it completely. The purpose is to understand the system, understand the process of identifying the entry points and the exit points of any stock for that matter. And it's the same with the part 1 videos as well. When I talk about the fundamentals, the idea is not to tell you that this is a good stock. The idea is to understand why this is a good stock and to understand how to identify a good stock by looking at the fundamental numbers. Now, there are many other things that you would look at besides the fundamentals that I talk about, and the technicals that I talk about, but this is the beginning. This is some things that you can look at to get a fairly good idea about whether it's a good stock to invest in or not, and what is a good time to invest in. All right, with that, let's get started with it. What you see on the screen is the stock COLPAL. Let me get rid of the demand zone first. There is a slight lag on my computer. All right, and let's go to the monthly chart. Before I start the technical analysis, I would like to show you the monthly chart of COLPAL. COLPAL has given a steady, strong growth throughout the years. So it really doesn't matter what price you buy the stock in. If you wait long enough, you definitely will get good growth. Having said that, if you know the system of a good place to enter, then you can make even more. And we are in the business of making more money, not just some money. So let's take a look at how a long-term investor would think. Now, a long-term investor should ideally take a look at 2 time frames. It's the weekly chart and the daily chart, right? We take a look at the weekly chart and get a general idea of what would be a good place to enter. And then we look at the daily chart to fine-tune our entry point and then take our trade. So the second one is the Bollinger Bands. Now, if you notice, every time the price touches the Bollinger Band, well, most of the times, there is a spring back to the mean. So it touches the Bollinger Band, springs back to the mean. Touches the Bollinger Band, springs back to the mean. Touches the Bollinger Band, springs back to the mean, and so on and so forth. Every single time, almost. Yeah. There are times when it touches the Bollinger Band and continues to go up, and there are always exceptions to the rule. There's no 100% guarantee. But more or less, once it touches the Bollinger Band, it goes up, and it's a decent place for us to decide what to do. Now, if you look at the price now on the weekly chart, it's already touched the Bollinger Band and it started its way back to the mean. Now, more or less, it is at the mean right now. Would you consider this to be the center of both the Bollinger Bands? So it's basically achieved its target. The question that arises is, would it continue its descent downwards to the lower Bollinger Band, or would it turn from here? Yeah? So the first indicator is that both the Bollinger Bands are far away from each other at this point in time. And if you notice, they go away and they come close. They go away and they come close. So at this point, they're away from each other. So the probability of it going further down and touching the Bollinger Band is a bit low. Yeah? On top of that, if you look at the RSI indicator, and this is the RSI indicator, it's at 57.87 on the weekly chart. The RSI indicator, by the way, is dependent on the chart that you're using. On the weekly chart, it's at 57.8788 at this point in time, which is, in my opinion, a little bit high. Anything Above 35, I consider it to be not a good price to buy. The ideal price to buy is below 35. The lower it is, the cheaper the stock. Yeah? Now, let's go and take a look at the daily chart to fine tune and understand what would be a good price to buy. The first thing that I look at when I'm fine tuning is the demand zones. So I see that there is one demand zone here. And the price has actually come very close to the demand zone. In fact, I think it might have reacted here a little bit. You do see that the price sprang up after this and it never came down. All right, so there are two demand zones that we have identified. The first demand zone is approximately 1634.10 and the second one is 1546. Now, let me take an entry point and keep it about here. There's a possibility that the, uh, the price may turn after it touches this demand zone and go upwards. So this looks like a healthy demand zone. And I can also see that it's already reacted and started moving sideways a little. So 1635 looks like a decent entry point for a long-term investor. The stop loss can be kept somewhere around here. So if the price enters the demand zone and does not react and continues to fall and breaches the demand zone, then I would keep a stop loss such that as it exits the demand zone, I'll get out of the trade. Yeah, I don't want to make a huge loss in this. And then probably I would take this demand zone as my entry point. And this demand zone is actually a much higher probability because this demand zone coincides with the demand zone on the weekly chart. Let's take a look at the demand zone on the weekly chart. Is there one somewhere around here? I don't see any. I see a demand zone here. Right. So it's at 1420, but it's a decent demand zone, 1546. And we won't just take a look at the demand zones, we'll also take a look at the Bollinger Bands. And at this point in time, the Bollinger Band is a little far away from the price. So it looks like this price may be breached. So in fact, I'm going to ignore this demand zone and wait for the price to come down till at least 1548. Also, when the price does come down to that level, at that point, we'll look at whether the price is touching the lower Bollinger Band or not. And if it is, then we'll take the trade, otherwise we'll not. I'll keep the stop loss a little bit closer here because I don't want to make a huge loss. And we'll also take a look at the relative strength index. The only reason I think that the price has a possibility of turning from here is that the relative strength index is actually at 38.77. Once it goes below 35, I think there's a high probability that the price changes. The direction of the price changes. I'm a swing trader. I want my returns to come in a few days to a few weeks. So I would take a look at a 60-minute chart as well. Yeah. Now let's look at the 60-minute chart, and this is my demand zone that I had identified. Now, if you look at the 60-minute chart, the lower Bollinger Band has already been touched and the price has already started reacting, which means that there's a possibility that it may go up from here. But let's not completely ignore the previous one and let's take a look at what's going to happen. Do we have a very strong demand zone here? I see that there's something here. Right. There is a very strong demand zone here. Now if we go to the end, yes. Right. After I have fine-tuned it in the 60-minute chart, I see that there is a very, very good profit potential here. So I will keep my entry about here and my stop loss just below my demand zone. And let's see if we can find a supply zone somewhere around here. This looks like a decent supply zone. Sorry, these are all basic candles, so I'm going to have to pull them across candles. Yep, that's a good supply zone, and then I'm going to keep my target right here. So for a swing trader, it gives me a risk to reward ratio of 1:10, but there are there are a few other supply zones here as well. So if I am happy, I could actually get out somewhere around here as well. Now, what would be a good time to exit is a complex question for a swing trader. Right? For a long-term investor, it's simple. When you need money or when you see another opportunity, etc., etc. But for a swing trader, when do you get out, right? What's a good price to get out? Now, the supply zones work like a very, very good way to get out, because once it hits the supply zone, it'll start its descent downwards, and you don't want to wait for a few more days to for it to go back up again. So you basically sell at the supply zone. But that's not the only criteria. You should also look at how much money are you making. After you deduct taxes and brokerage and what have you, are you making enough money? After deducting all that, if I get about 5 to 7% per trade within a period of a few days to a few weeks, I would take that trade. I would get out and then get back in on another trade that gives me a better potential profit. Yeah. So that is the swing trader, and then from there we move on to the intraday trader. Now, before I move on to intraday trader, let me delete all the demand zones and supply zones and entries and exits that I've made here so far, and go to the lower time frame of 15 minutes. Now, if you look at this, this looks like a very, very sweet stock for an intraday trader. It gives you a decent range. It goes up, it comes down, goes up, it comes down, it goes up and comes down, right? So I am assuming that there is a demand zone here somewhere. Yes, I can see a demand zone here. That's getting triggered every time the price is hitting this range. Yeah, it comes down, hits the price range, goes up and so on. And there should be a supply zone here somewhere. Yeah, there's a supply zone that's getting hit again and again. Now, I wouldn't really trust this demand zone, considering that the Bollinger Band is far away from the current price, and it's already been tested 2 or 3 times. But still, if I were a betting man and if the demand zone was, the Bollinger Band was a little bit higher, I don't mind entering at 1644, keeping a stop loss of about here and target somewhere around here. This gives me about 1:3, 0.53 actually, 1:, almost 1:4 risk to reward ratio. I could actually fine tune this to a slightly above price, and I could reduce this a little bit further so that the stop loss does not get triggered, and then the price doesn't go up. So, fine tuned a little bit. I still get a 3.42. I could actually go down further with the stop loss and see if I can get a good decent 3. There's a 3. So this could be my entry point, this could be my stop loss, and this is my target. Now, I'm not going to take the trade today because it's already 2:25. I've got 1 hour to go, and I don't see the price going up so much today. But there's a decent possibility that the price will go up tomorrow because, well, it's close to the lower Bollinger Band. It is on the lower side of the range that it's been following so far. COLPAL is a very good stock, so the probability of it going up is more than the probability of it going down. Of course, if the market forces push it down, it could go down. But from what I can see, it has gone down quite a bit already, and it's now consolidating. So there's a high probability that it will go up. So, I don't mind taking the trade. Also, if you look at the relative strength index, it's at a 39.23. Tomorrow, and if I find, I could actually take the entry somewhere around here as well and pull down the stop loss. There is the demand zone, of course, but this demand zone is already taken out, so I'm not entirely sure about it. So, while there are these indicators, you need to eyeball it a little bit, use your gut feeling a little bit. These indicators give you a very good idea about, where the stock is going and what the patterns are. But you need to be able to judge and take a call. So I don't mind keeping it here, keeping a stop loss somewhere around here and a target here. It's still giving me a nice 3:1 risk to reward ratio. And the probability of the price going up is extremely high. So once again, don't take these numbers literally, especially intraday traders. Don't take these numbers, literally. Try to understand the system of using these three indicators. There are tons of indicators that you will find when you are trading stocks. But don't get, if you try to use too many indicators, you get baffled. So keep it simple. So try to understand how I am coming up with my entry points and exit points, and use this system and make money. That's all I have for you today. COLPAL, folks, excellent stock. Getting. Um, I'm always looking for feedback, so talk to me. Um, Other than that, I hope we make a ton of money off the stock market. All the best and have fun.